If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout. Last weekend, Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church had his big conference in the nation's capital where they celebrated their organization, Outreach, which is sort of like an evil version of Courage. Courage is an organization that helps Catholics who have been given the cross to carry of having the, we'll call them inclinations that James Martin seems to try to defend. Or Courage helps those Catholics not give in to those things, to live according to the moral laws of God and the Church, to follow the Church's constant, immutable teachings on that subject. And these Catholics who are part of Courage, who live according to what the Church says on that, are a model for everybody. They're some of the easiest places to find heroic virtue in Catholicism today if you're looking for it. Yes, many of them, fall down when trying to resist those sinful inclinations, but they then get back up, go to confession, and then try to live their lives the way the Church wants them to live their lives. They're to be praised for it. Outreach is the evil version of this. It's an organization that seeks to have the Church's teachings on the subject changed. Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church has never hidden the fact that he believes that St. Paul was wrong, meaning that the Bible is wrong on that sin that he has such a weird interest in, and that the Church's teachings need to be re-examined, meaning, which is a nice way of saying, changed. They had their big conference this past week, and Cardinal Gregory was one of the guests of honor. He offered the Mass for them, meaning there was a whole lot of sacrilegious communion going on there. Outreach's stance is on this issue that those with those inclinations should be encouraged to live the way those with, we'll call them nature-conforming inclinations, are to live, to reserve certain activities for the married state, to be in long-term loving relationships. Outreach is careful never to actually say married, at least in current statements, but that is what they're pushing for. They're pushing for the same system in the secular world to be imposed on the Catholic Church, that the Catholic Church do get with the times, in the most overt example of modernism and how it impacts Catholic morality you could possibly find. And so America Magazine is, of course, celebrating this because, of course, they are. It's a Jesuit news outlet whose editor-in-chief, or at least as their editor-at-large, is Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church. So, of course, they're celebrating this. And they give us this headline. At Outreach Conference, Cardinal Gregory stresses dialogue and unity in the Church. He never comes out and quite says it, but when he starts talking about unity, he makes some oblique references to the lack of unity in the Church and in the culture, and how we need dialogue and dialogue and dialogue. And the way he says it makes it pretty clear. Those who undermine the unity in the Church are the conservative Catholics and traditionalist Catholics. That we are the ones who want the same faith that our ancestors had, are the ones who undermine unity in the Church. A little bit of reading between the lines here, but you'll see what he's talking about. From the article, quote, celebrating an August 3rd Mass for the Outreach 2024 Redacted Catholic Ministry Conference at Georgetown University, Cardinal Wilton D. Gregory of Washington stressed the need for sincere dialogue in seeking unity in the Catholic Church. In many respects, you are engaging in an act of synodality. The vision and invitation proposed by Pope Francis that sincerely and openly speaking and listening to one another under the light and guidance of the Holy Spirit is the way that the Church grows in perfection, Cardinal Gregory said in his homily at the Mass, which was celebrated at the university's Dahlgren Chapel of the Sacred Heart. The annual Outreach Conference, held August 2nd to the 4th this year, brings together Catholics who identify as the multi-letter acronym for the James Martin crowd and supporters of their community. According to the conference's website, the gathering aims to, quote, build community, share best practices, and worship together. The Cardinal praised Outreach Conference attendees for their willingness to engage in discussions at a challenging time for the Catholic Church and the United States. The increase in violence, the forfeiture of civility in public discourse, the disavowal of once well-known hallowed values can be found in both institutions. You nonetheless gather now for dialogue at this moment in time, and your willingness to engage in sincere dialogue is itself a welcome source of hopefulness, Cardinal Gregory said. End quote. That lack of civility in the public discourse, he says, is found in the church and civil sphere as a dig at traditionalists and conservative Catholics. That's pretty apparent. Most everything that you're seeing now happening in the church involving American prelates, and frankly a lot of out of Rome, is being framed in the coming elections in the United States. It just is. And there's no way we can escape that. And that's one of the reasons why I've kind of stepped back from my disavowal of ever covering politics, is because they are now so invested. The U.S. bishops are, the Bergoglian side of things, they're so invested in the outcome of that they are now bringing it into virtually everything they talk about publicly. And here you see that here. One of the really interesting things is they talk about the loss of shared values in the public sphere. Well, while they're at he's saying this at a conference that seeks to eliminate the shared values inside the church about activities suited to the married state and what activities are absolutely not suited to the married state or any state. Sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance or justice, depending on the translation of scripture you read. He's saying this at a conference that is trying to reject Catholic morality, the shared values of the Catholic Church. Truly a bizarre place to make such a statement, but again, if you look at Cardinal Wilton Gregory's background and some of the things that people have kind of said he found himself wrapped up in, and some of the bishops you might not expect to have been in his orbit at that time, causing a lot of raised eyebrows, it begins to make more sense, especially when you remember that the current crop of bishops most closely aligned with Pope Francis, which includes Cardinal Gregory, are materialists. All of them are. Not materialists in seeking wealth and fortune and fame, but materialists in the sense that they frame everything in the physical struggle in the world today and things going on in the world, politics, and the rest of it. That's their primary concern, instead of the eternal salvation of souls. You get more of that here. Quote, reflecting on the gospel meeting at Mass, Washington's Archbishop said, John the Evangelist reminds us that unity, being joined with each other, is a goal to be achieved, and it remains a sign that Christ himself is there in our midst, urging us to reflect the unity that he shares uniquely with his Father, and invites us to share with him. Cardinal Gregory said the need for unity in the U.S. and in the Catholic Church is an elusive enterprise that requires attention. Our national unity needs constant attention, as does the unity of our Church, he said, adding, unity does not mean uniformity or sameness of opinion in heart and mind. There is a word that we frequently use to describe the spiritual connectedness that must be the goal of our Catholic Church, communion. Cardinal Gregory praised the Outreach Conference for being dedicated to the pursuit of our becoming a more inclusive family of faith, welcoming others in spite of our differences. Occasionally, we may find it difficult as Catholics and as Americans to achieve such a state of being together harmoniously. Needless to say, such unity must remain a goal and a desire for both institutions, an aspiration that we must strive to achieve and to value. This gathering is an opportunity for people to listen to one another in love, knowing full well that we might see another's position as difficult to understand and to accept. Concluding his homily, the Cardinal said, the presence and the pastoral needs of our James Martin afflicted sisters and brothers may often be viewed as a volatile topic, but they must be faced with sincerity and genuine compassion. I pray that this conference advance that goal and make us a stronger, holier, and more welcoming church and nation. End quote. Unity is found in surrendering the truth. We used to be unified under basic beliefs in the Catholic Church, and not just about the seven sacraments, but about our conduct as Catholics. You know, even the worst popes in history, the ones who in their lives rejected the Church's teaching by being hypocrites, there were some of the popes and bishops who famously broke their vows, were rather into the ladies, so to speak, and had kids and the rest of it. They weren't supposed to, but they still paid lip service to it. They still taught it officially in their official capacities. They never used the ambo to say, maybe we should change these teachings. They didn't even do that at the time when the Protestants had broken away from the Catholic Church and were overtly rejecting those teachings. In fact, many of these same men who were morally questionable themselves, at the very least, reiterated the teachings of the Church. while failing to live up to them themselves. Yeah, they were sinners. Some of them very great sinners. Some of them almost certainly lost their souls in the process. But at least they had the wherewithal not to stand there and say that at a conference that is rejecting the morality of the church, they'll then lecture the church and the country that's hosting this conference on the lack of unity, while they themselves have broken from unity in the church with a schismatic attitude about Catholic morality. And a high-profile cardinal, one of the highest profile in the country, giving voice to this. The hypocrisy of it is incredible. What do you think about this story? Are you surprised at all? Let me know in the comments, please. And hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And remember, pray for Cardinal Gregory, that his mind and his heart be illuminated in this, and Pastor Jimmy Martin and all the attendees of that conference. Pray for their conversion, interior conversion. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.